We'll call to order the Town Council Budget Workshop for May 7th. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Public comment, seeing that we have no one from the public here to speak. Joanne, do we have anybody that sent in?
No, I didn't
No?
receive
Okay,
anything.
so we have no public comment. We'll get right into the budget workshop. First item, general government assessor.
Okay.
All right, all right. Jumping right into goal number one, investigate the feasibility of an annual revaluation schedule. I've decided to put that off for now until we do some further research to really find out how that would affect the residents. So that is not in, as I mentioned in my presentation, that's not being considered this year, an annual reval. Goal number two, obtain designation from the International Association of Assessing Officers and complete the IAAO certification, Excellence in Assessment Administration. And goal number three, inspect at least 10% of the properties within the town of Rocky Hill. And you can see the performance measurements.
Oh, sorry.
We do anticipate an increase in the number of appeals due to the reval year. And both to the Board of Appeals and to Superior Court. And then, of course, the 10% of the property inspection annually. Okay, full-time salaries, overtime, that's particularly for, reval time, doing field research. We have 0 increases in auditing, as well as support services. Support services is the pictometry flyover, for the mapping. Let's see. Slight increase of technology software. That's the CAMA, the iQuality, and the basically it's for the online mapping and geographic information systems. That was a switch over, so that was a slight increase. Jumping down to technical supplies, we have an increase of 34.5%. That particular line item covers motor vehicle pricing manuals, the construction guides, the pricing digests, assessors handbooks, things of that nature. And then down in dues and subscriptions, the $80 increase there. That's just memberships in the various assessment world in Connecticut chapter of the IAAO and other membership organizations that we need to be part of.
So basically $70,700 increase over the prior year.
Yeah.
17%, most of it's salaries.
Salary
And
contractual.
I'm assuming those are contractual.
Yes.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, and when we came into this budget year, 23, 24, our intention was to consolidate a clerical position to be shared between the tax collector and the tax assessor office. That did not fare well. The union had a grievance against that, to have one person doing two positions. So we, about halfway through the year, had to come out and fill the assessor side of that.
Open it up for questions.
Yes, and just further on the salary, so even with that position that was added back during the year, we're projected at 332 actual for the year that we're in versus 382 is the ask for next year. So again, can you elaborate on that bump?
Right. So you're having, that particular union is just settled, and they have people, I know I talk about them all the time, but they have steps in there. So you've got some people, actually, except for the assessor himself, are all moving up through the steps. They're relatively new employees, and they'll go up to the step process. So you've got steps combined with adding in that full covered position. So again, we had no budgeted position for the assessor for the clerical. We're adding the full person in for 24, 25.
So part of the salary increase represents the half-time staff person?
Correct.
Okay. And my other question is this, walking back the concept, or at least deferring the concept of annual assessment, does that not realize any cost savings for us?
Well, we'd probably say ultimately through legal costs, yes.
Yeah,
Because
so-
then you would have, obviously the reval would happen more frequently, so you wouldn't have these going out and staying in court cases for 2 and 3 years and trying to settle them. It'd be every year you'd have a new valuation. So you could ultimately, we'd love to see it tested sometime to see if we could save in some of those legal fees.
So that's interesting. So one foreseeable side effect of going to annual reassessments is annual litigation, as opposed to, pretty much most of it just being every 5 years.
But ideally fewer of them.
I beg your pardon?
I said ideally fewer of them, as they're coming up every year rather than, and then the delta would be obviously not as great going from 1 to 5 years.
Yeah, the market rate, the market change would be less drastic going year to year. as opposed to every
Typically,
5 years.
right. And I guess theoretically that makes it less of a dramatic change and might prompt a different calculus by the property owner as to whether it's worth litigating.
Exactly. Exactly that.
All right. I guess that's more of a policy thing, but rather than the budget right now. But for now, taking that off the table for the coming year doesn't change the numbers here, though.
Right.
Right.
Okay,
You
thanks.
still need a budget for it.
By the way, would the cost of the annual reval be less than a cost of a 5-year reval?
No, the annual reval would be around $40,000.
Yeah.
And how much is the 5-year reval?
Or we budget that in the past over 5 years, about 40 grand. Correct.
Yeah.
40,000.
So it would be an
So it's
increase.
200,000, or,
No, it'd be the,
so it'd be a pure
we came
add?
in around 60 for the 5-year when we did the bid out, high 60s.
So that's 12,000 a year versus
40 per year.
40,000 per year. So that's a 20, so that's a lot of savings in legal mitigation.
Yeah.
So we'd have to look at, I know we're not
Exactly.
talking
No,
about
we
it
gotta
tonight.
study it.
Yeah, okay.
Right, yeah.
It's hard to predict who's going to litigate and who isn't.
Thank you for trying to combine that job, and a great effort. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I have a question on your performance matrix, 23, 24. It looks like we inspected 2015 properties, which is much higher, 2.5 times higher than the prior and the expected. Did we have a consultant, or how did we accomplish that?
You're talking about 750 up to 2,000.
Yeah.
Right, and then it
2015.
dropping down to 800 in the current year?
We did have a consultant out, what they do the personal property audits, and then whatever they end up collecting, they get the portion from it. So we had an increase in personal property audits. So
So how does that impact the budget, though? I'm not seeing.
you won't see it in there. It offsets the revenue side. So if they can collect, then they'll get a portion of the collection. You'll see that on the revenue side. If they go out and they do an audit and they find $200,000, and I won't quote their percentage, but they would get a percentage of the 200. You get paid from the revenue. It's not an expenditure budget on that list.
I'm not sure we're talking the same thing.
Okay.
We inspected 2,000 properties in 23-24, but we're only inspecting 800 in 24-25 and 750 in 22-23. The actual work of doing the inspections is done in-house or externally?
It's a combination.
Yeah, it's a combination. We have in-house and we do have an external on personal property.
So the extra audits done in 23-24 were offset by fees they generated?
On the personal property, and this is all property, so not just personal.
Okay.
So I don't mean to sway you on assuming that was all personal property. We don't have that many personal properties. This would be all.
I guess I'm not following something, because why wouldn't we then, if there's no
Yeah.
cost to us, audit every property, view every property every year?
Stuart?
I'm just missing something in
That's
the,
okay.
in the
You want to
execution.
elaborate on that one? I know.
I'm not sure I love the auditing all these properties and then finding a way to get additional revenue, like, is gonna sit great with some residents, you know? I don't know.
Okay, on the audits, we audit about 1/3 of the personal property accounts every year. All right, and we pay a percentage on whatever the revenue is generated. And it's around 325 to 350 personal property accounts. We actually have an auditor come in and audit them. And for every dollar we spend, we get about $8 in return. So that makes money. On the real estate side,
Including the expense of paying the people doing the audits,
we get $8 back for every dollar we spend.
and we've already covered the auditors, inspectors.
The fee for the audits is not in the budget, because
No, I
they get a
I
percentage
that.
of,
So we're making a net $8 for every dollar we spend.
yes.
Go ahead, thank you.
Okay, on the inspections, the law requires us to inspect 100% of the town over a 10-year period. We have about 7,600 parcels in town. That's where the 750 comes. We had the thing called COVID, so we were behind because, COVID said we can't go out and visit people. So we didn't do many inspections for the roughly 2 years of COVID, so we had to make it up. How did we make it up? We worked a lot. And that doesn't show up in the budget because you pay me salary, you pay my assistant salary, and that's where a lot of it came from. We worked a lot of hours in the last 2 years to meet the revaluation goal on time for the state certification to say, yes, we did it appropriately. So
That explains that. I mean, you guys worked overtime, which is, you're salaried, you hit a spike, and now we're going back to the normal.
we're hopefully trying to go back
Okay.
to.
Well, that
and then
definitely
on
explains the
the
jump.
Yeah, that explains the jump in the number of units visited and why we're not seeing an impact in the budget. I just didn't understand the math.
no, I understand.
I do have a follow-up question then. If we make $8 for every dollar we spend, where does that money go? Is that the special revenue again?
No, that offsets the revenue. So these would be revenues we were not normally expected we'd collect the full amount. So it's an offset against it. So it's a credit to the revenue side of the budget.
Okay, but you did say you try to do 1/3 of the properties every year,
The personal property accounts.
but we have to just do it once every 10 years?
No, with personal property, we don't have to audit at all.
Oh, okay.
But
We just have that as our goal.
our goal is generally to, my whole, thing is about being fair and equitable to everybody. And if we're not auditing everybody, then that's not fair and equitable.
Correct.
Because some people in this equation get a refund. So we're not just auditing people that that we know are that are underreporting. We're auditing everybody, and with that, some get a refund.
Some pay more. Right.
And then we do it over a 3-year period because the law allows us to reach back for 3 years.
Okay.
And then when we're done with the 3 years, we start over. So we try and do about a third of the year every year with personal property.
Yep. Can you tell me the definition of personal property? I'm a little bit ignorant on this one. I
Okay.
apologize.
The personal property is anything not permanently affixed to the realty.
That would be, you're talking about businesses,
And it's for businesses, not
not residents.
residential.
Only businesses.
Only businesses. So if you go into Walmart, it's one of my favorite taxpayers
Probably mine
for
too.
many reasons. You go in the store, you see all the racks, you see the cash registers, you see the shopping carts, just about everything except for the merchandise that you see that is not permanently affixed to the real estate is personal property. For instance, in this room, this podium, this screen, this microphone, this would be business personal property. That screen is personal property, and businesses have to pay property tax on that. And it's a self-reporting tax, so we rely on them to tell the truth. But to make sure they're honest,
So you visit them every 3 years.
but to make sure they're honest, we audit them about approximately once every 3 years, and we get $8 back for every dollar we spend. So that, we're not on the hook for any of it. So if they don't discover anything, we don't get anything. But as you see, every 3 years, there's someone.
There's something there, yeah.
Because a lot of municipalities don't audit, and so the accountants aren't expecting it, or the municipality will audit and then they won't do it again for 10 or 15 years. So whereas here we're exercising a program, and it's it's beneficial to the taxpayers here in town. And as we go, we get more and more compliance, but as you see, we don't get complete compliance.
I thank you for the efforts. I'll echo what Alan said.
So-
Any other questions for Stuart?
The effective date is for October 1st, so when do you do the audits? Is that correct? It's like personal property as of October 1st?
They have to report the personal property by November 1st is the filing date. As of October 1st, our assessment date is October 1st. But we notify them it's 3 years prior to the tax due date. So we just send out notices of the next round of audit. So the previous 3 grand lists, we will be auditing them for.
When you do the audit, I mean, so it's as of October 1st, if you buy something in March,
Well, that'll come, if you bought it this
the
year,
next-
it'll show up on,
the next year.
it should show up on the next year's return. And then if you don't put it on the next year's return, we'll see you in 3 years. So.
Everybody set? All right, we'll move on to item B, Public Works, Highway and Roads.
Gotta fix my car here. Okay.
Okay, highway maintenance, they have 2 goals listed. Goal number 1, improve equipment and tools for safety, productivity, and efficient operations. Basically, that's an amortization plan over, for the vehicles and heavy equipment for over the next 15 years. Excuse me. And goal number 2 is just a continuous improvement for team building, team solutions, trying to institute positive attitudes and success to achieve the stated goals.
Ray, how do you measure productivity in goal number 1?
It's based on the the amortization plan of the equipment, the vehicles that we're going to go over in the capital budget.
So it's on the equipment side, not on the
Yeah,
human resources.
right.
Okay.
Performance measures. Excuse me. Of course, the road mileage plowed won't change hardly at all. Number of catch basins, we have a total of 2,320 catch basins. Number of catch basins cleaned, they try to do, a quarter of catch basins per year. And then the number of catch basins, you're going to see the number of catch basins repaired. You'll see 338, 700, and 700. Those are errors. You'll see the number of catch basins inspected, 338, 700, 700 in the top line there. And then move down one category, it says number of catch basins repaired. It's really, maybe it was in the 60s last year, this current year, 23, 24. There's estimated at 70, and they're anticipating to repair about 100 catch basins. So those figures need to be adjusted to 60, 70, and 100. And then, of course, the volume from the catch basins are cleaned.
What does that mean?
Cubic yards.
Cubic yards cleaned.
Beg your pardon?
The amount of stuff taken out of the catch basins, by cubic yardage.
Okay.
Yeah, the sand, the grit, the things that get washed in. Of course, as usual, we have the full-time salaries. Overtime, we're looking to try to hold that steady from, what's projected at $150,000. Even though we didn't have a lot of snow, we did have a lot of ice, and we also had a lot of rain, and we've had several rain events that were highly unusual. And it seemed like most of these events occurred on weekends, which caused the highway crew to go out and supplement the other emergency responders. Equipment rental.
Ray,
Yeah.
just a quick question. We have 98,000 year-to-date, which I think is like a March 31st number-ish.
Yeah, we're at about 115 today.
Okay. So it looks like we could be short of the 150 then, right?
We could be.
Okay.
Yes, present.
It's, yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I'm jumping down to equipment rental is a $10,000 increase. That's for screeners and crushers. Screeners are for topsoil, crushers are for crushing reinforced rock for different projects. We're holding steady on the zero for the street lighting account. New and replacement signs, nothing there. Jumping down to salt and pretreatment. We are on a regional and a state aid bidding, with CROG and also the DAS state bid for that. and just based on the price of the salt at the time. And then food, you'll see a pretty good figure for food. That's to feed the crew when they're out plowing, basically, or doing emergency work or overtime work.
Ray, question on the street lighting, and I know there's no year-over-year change, but I keep on thinking, Mona, with the switch over to LED and everything, is the maintenance of 1,700 street lights, those are on town roads, what is the majority of that budget item? Just maintenance,
This particular line is the actual electric bill.
electric bill?
Yeah.
Okay,
Electric bill entirety, yeah.
okay.
I'm gonna go here again. The pre-salt is 78,000. I don't think we're gonna get any ice between now and June 30th.
Let me check where we are. But they do try to get some in before the.
I mean, it's
the
good to
close of the year.
overstock too, I
Yeah.
guess, right? if
Yeah,
it
we're
lasts.
actually at, and that was in February, so we're actually at 131, because we did have a couple of, I know, instances since then.
Hey, we'll get there.
Hopefully it will stop right there.
Yeah.
Any other questions on highway roads?
Yeah.
Jeff?
Hi, guys. This is Jeff. Just a quick question about the street light. I think about what Councilor Mandel was saying. If the 275 is for electricity and we have LEDs now, would that go down, or is that already factored in the prior year to be have LEDs? I don't remember the exact timing for going LED on the street lights.
Yeah, that factored back a few years already,
Yeah, those LEDs, I think, go back to 16,
probably about
almost
17 years.
2016,
About
17,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So that's already reduced.
correct.
Base, assuming. Okay.
And I think that's
Thank you.
that's a good point, Jeff, because we had talked about it before, Mona, and you gave, the correct answer, I guess, with, yes, we did save on switching over to LED, but the rates
Right.
continued to go up. So had we still had the old bulbs, I mean, the rate would be far higher.
Much higher,
Yeah,
yes,
So we kind of kept the line, I guess.
right.
Which may be difficult to keep the line going forward.
Right, well,
It's all with the rate.
yeah.
But
We do have
Delivery
solar
of it,
credits
right.
that help this line, so that's allowing us to maintain as well.
Yep.
Although, we're gonna use some of those solar credits for the RLE project.
But can a municipality use a different source? Like how consumers can shop around for electrical supply, or can a municipal
Take
do
that
that?
one.
Yeah, we can. And, at one point, we were involved in a CROG consortium at one point, when we first started developing the solar farm. And we found out that with the solar farm, theoretically, we would be saving more money coming out of the consortium, but we still have to utilize and pay for all of the power generated by the solar farm. 3 megawatts we have to purchase, and and the way these credits work, we're supposed to be getting virtual credits to offset a good portion of each account that's signed up to utilize some of the power, in each of the 3 blocks of solar panels we have. But it doesn't always work out.
No, it
We
doesn't.
have a backlog of credits that we can't really utilize right now. That gave us a little cushion for the RLE to utilize some of those credits.
Is Tesla paying?
I know we had the Board of Ed went with another supplier, but still gets the credit. So they had actually, and one of their schools had such a large credit from the solar, so that we had to start reallocating it away from the schools and trying to find smaller accounts to compensate. Because of course, on their side, they're budgeting and they're paying the expenses, but if the credit accumulates, then it wasn't being absorbed. So it becomes a bit of a shell game, basically, because these credits come through for the solar, but they're not, when they exceed the bill, you don't get a refund check in the mail. It will just sit and hope that you'll eventually accumulate.
Is it the Tesla paying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
are you still, because I remember you had to, a while back, prior manager had to fight them for payment.
No, the 90,000 at the end of the year, they've been very good.
No, yeah, the lease, they're fine with those.
Great. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think it was a switch
So-
over from, originally it was Solar City.
Solar City.
And then Tesla bought them out, so that might have been the issue back then.
Okay. Thanks.
So just a quick kind of perhaps off the wall question, but just like as companies sell carbon credits to other companies as they need them, is there a way to sell these electricity credits at all to somebody else?
I wish. I wish we could. I really do.
Okay.
But
Just
he
a
said
thought.
no.
Come and sell them cheap.
Yeah, get rid of.
All set, Jeff?
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, well, if there's no more questions, we'll move on to the highway garage.
Okay, Highway Garage. Replace the 15-year-old equipment that I mentioned. Actually, that ties right back to the goal number 1 under the highway maintenance goal. Upgrade the existing garage. You'll see a proposal in the CIP to fund a study to see what we need over the long term. And then add portable column lifts, that's a infrastructure issue, and implement a work order system for all vehicles.
I just asked what the priorities are there. I know we've seen them, priority 9, 8. What does that stand for?
Oh, that's all lovely.
Yeah. That goes back to the,
Let's see if I can grab it.
the beginning.
I'm
That
gonna,
would be
I'll point
page
here. I'm right.
29.
There we go. So we have, according to town manager, as we build the budget, what are the priorities and issues as we're building the budget? So departments know that these are the priorities. So when you have a goal that's tying back to the town manager's priorities, we try to earmark that to make sure that we're recognizing that. And this is part, as well as that, as a GFOA process, they love to see that you have goals in place before you start your budget and then watching the departments tie back.
And these goals will be, over time, and next year they could be changed, modified by the council, and as we discuss things in the future.
Thank you.
So I think they had a 9 was maintaining fleet and heavy equipment operational and.
Thanks.
Okay. Garage.
Mona, just a question on, we've been continually reinvesting in upgraded or updated machinery, equipment, vehicles over the last couple of years. How has that impacted the age of the fleet? Like, where are we trending?
We're making progress. Yes, oh, let me see, I thought I had it handy. But we're accumulating that, and I was bringing my notes. I don't know where I shuffled them around to, but definitely we've gotten rid of like a 2000 and a 2001. So our goal was to get the 5-year average. And I had it handy, and I can't grab it here, but they're doing a great job in monitoring that as well. There's a request in to replace one existing that is a 1999 Sterling, and if we can drop that one off of the fleet and bring it up, then we should be able to reach that 5-year average going on. So we still have a couple of old items. That's on the vehicles themselves. They still have some heavy equipment, are very aged, that we haven't given the attention perhaps that it needs, but
So kind of the follow, is that what's driving our diesel fuel decrease by 8,000 gallons? Is the more efficient updated equipment that we're purchasing, or is there another reason to see a decline in the number of gallons purchased?
I honestly don't know how that associates to the vehicle.
Okay.
Oh, I don't.
Would Joe want to, is something Joe would want to throw in? I'm just curious because I don't want to see that we have equipment and we don't have fuel to operate.
Does that have anything to do with the efficiency of the vehicles, or?
Newer equipment, it's going to get better fuel mileage. You know, the engines today compared to 1999 are a lot, but part of the reason for that fuel number being lower is we haven't had 27 snow events in the last couple of years. So I haven't been on the roads as much. We've had significant amount of ice events, but we're not out here 18, 36 hours. You know, the ice events have been, well, unfortunately, they've been on the weekends, but we're not here as many hours.
Okay.
So I'm not burning nearly as much fuel as I have 4 or 5 years ago when we had more events with significant amounts of snow.
Okay. No, I was looking at it, and if we had a decrease because of more efficient vehicles, that's something we're not factoring into the cost of the new equipment. I mean, that's a significant savings. At $4 a gallon, that's $32,000.
Right.
And just the last question on it, you know, Ray, Joe, either whoever wants to answer it. We've remained relatively flat in the repairs and maintenance side, the equipment. And I know we've put newer equipment in, so I also recognize, because I work with fleets, that things just happen that you can't project and they change your budget. But is the newer equipment helping lower some of the repairs, and I should say repairs and not.
Yeah, and you should see it, but the problem is the last couple of years, the cost in metal and in parts has gone up significantly.
Yep,
You
so
know?
the savings are offset. by
Right,
increased
so
price.
the savings are offset.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So my question, Mona, you had said you're trying to get the fleet to 5-year average.
Yes, and I grabbed my page, so we're actually at 10 at this point. And like I said, we've got right now a 1999 off of there, so if we pull that, then that should bring us obviously closer to that average. So we've got a 99 that's on the request for capital to be replaced. And right now we have the average age 2014. So that's.
I mean, this just goes along with part 2 of my questions. When the lease is, when it's fully paid, the lease is up, then it's time for another one. Is that, I mean, it just seems to be never ending.
We would be fortunate to get to that point. I think we are still at the point where the 5-year lease is paid and it still sits, you know, in the fleet for another 5 years. We've got to get that point where I think if you were just doing a constant turnover, that would be the ideal fleet. But to even get to a 10-year fleet, I know Joe and I have been working on this for a few years now, and so hit that 10-year mark was a major accomplishment.
So, I mean, when you say 5-year average, it's not replacing a vehicle after 5 years.
Oh, no.
It's just paying.
That's our goal. Our goal to have a 5-year. We are at 10. We are at 10.
I'm still not understanding. Maybe I'm missing.
So if I took the age of all vehicles right now, I've got anything from a 1999 to a 2024 of overall, the average age of those is 2014.
Right, so, okay, so that's the 10 years. So what I'm saying is, when a vehicle reaches 6 years under your 5-year ideal average, would that be in the pipeline to be replaced?
If we were at the ideal point, yes. But because we're at the 2010, we're still trying to get the one that's finished its 5-year payments is waiting its turn a couple behind.
But John, in a way, I think you'd have, if it's a 5-year
Have a lag.
average, you're going to have a 10-year-old and a 1-year-old giving you the 5.
Correct.
So we're not replacing it in year 6, we're replacing
That's-
in year 11, I think is what
Yes,
the real number
that's,
is.
that's what I was trying to narrow down,
Okay.
because it sounded like
You explained that
ideally,
very well.
and they were getting to 5 years, that, yeah, and
That
it
was
just
it.
seemed a
You'd be
never-ending
buying new
cycle.
equipment every
Right.
5 years.
Well, that's the thing, yeah, you never stop making payments then. You never get that
Exactly.
period where
Right.
where everything's paid off. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
No, we're not there.
Any other questions?
Just a wacky increase for tires and tubes
Tires and tubes.
over the time, 23 to 24 to projected 25.
Oh, let me look up.
Is there a reason why it went up so much from 23 to 24?
23, we had almost 17,000, then we budgeted 31,000,
We're at
And the
18 now.
actual was
Yeah.
at 18.
So we're actually going to be doing the purchase toward the year, end of year, and I know you were going to probably say exactly that, Joe. But the purchase of the tires usually ends up toward the last quarter after we've made it through the winter, but.
So, yeah, that's correct statement. And the other significant part of it is loader, backhoe, that's the number you're seeing, because those aren't like the other vehicles we have where we're replacing those, and it's continual, and that's basically part of that budget. But when we have to get a spike, you see the larger number, that would be, I needed 4 loader tires, which are significantly higher than the rest of the tires. And I don't need them as often,
Right,
so
Exactly.
that's why you see the change,
thank you.
all right?
Yep, makes sense.
One more time, anybody else? Move on to sanitation.
Goal 1, pretty clear. Reduce waste. Goal 2, build a new transfer station. That will probably be, if the study for the Public Works facility does get approved, that would probably be part of the whole project. The whole study would be looking at Public Works facility, including transfer station. Generate income.
You want me to touch on that?
Yeah, just
So-
that.
So we did budget this year an initiative to do something where we were having the condos become, paying for their service, which we made the effort, and I think maybe caused a lot of alarm and concern, so we had to pull back on that thought process. So we'll have a revenue line that has no revenue in it, but it's still something that we continue to think about, is that there are definitely some collections that perhaps shouldn't be the burden of the town, and we'll try to find some better ideas on how to approach that if there's any options.
That was the goal introduced last year.
It was,
Last year's
yeah.
budget.
What type of collections, just curious?
What was that?
What type of collections are we?
Those that are, may not be residential, if it would be apartments and condos and so forth, so, yeah.
So Mona, just looking at the overall, we have a $369,000 increase, but $305,000 of it is sewer charges,
It is.
which MDC stood before us and told us we'd have no increase this year. So as a MDC member, is there a way we were able to push back towards that?
Well,
No.
okay.
there's timing
It gets long-winded, and I don't know how much detail you need, but basically, it's the timing of things. For example, today, for MDC, I know what next year's first half of the year will be. We have tried in the past. You'll get their annual, and they have a tendency to do the first couple of quarters will be higher, and then the next will be followed as a decrease. So we hear frequently that it won't be an increase, but that's MDC as a total. What happens is it's distributed to the various towns based on the grand list. So we will have a shift, so they may not see a change, but we could see the change because depending on us in comparison to the other towns, Newington, Weathersfield, so forth. So right now, for the 23-24 year, it showed, we were trying to project what that next half of the year could be. What I have now for the 24-25, I have a half a year, let me see, I think I brought it with me, going about $850,000 a quarter, although the prior two were $826,000. We have seen consistently that that's going to change. It could go down, or it could remain the same. And at this point, this is budgeting, assuming that 850 is going to stay the same.
Yeah, there's a pattern that at MDC.
It's-
We-
right,
Over the
it's-
past few years,
yeah.
right, the first two are lower
Right.
than the second two.
Yeah, so if I were to probably budget wisely, this would be the number. If I were going to attempt to be conservative and hope that they do historically come in lower for those next 2 quarters, hoping that I would be right, I think you would have a margin that you would maybe take 90,000 off. I'm not sure if that's something we want to do. You know, so it's either do we budget low and wait for it to come in high, or do we want to stay cautious and be prepared to cover? And I'm flexible in that. It's become something that's not as easy to chase as you would think.
What is the deadline for them giving you a final number, I guess, for those last 2 quarters?
We should know in
The budget?
December.
So it'll be after the budget?
Oh, way after the budget, yeah. Yeah.
I'd suggest we keep that in there and hope it comes in a little bit lower. At least we'll have a cushion.
Right.
Is that line item grinding service that what we're talking about?
The sewer service,
Right.
sewer service charge.
I was noticed the grinding
That went
service
up
is way
quite a
up
bit.
too.
Right, that comes later,
Yeah,
yes.
that's the $305,000.
Right.
I'm sorry, why did grinding service go up so much?
Oh, that's, grinding services are for, the grinding of the, all
Roads.
the brush, curbside pickups for the brush, storm debris, Straska Farm, and the 100 and some odd trees they had to take down and grind.
Yeah, and if I may, if you looked at the prior year with that 12,000, that wasn't the actual need, that was just the actual dollars available. So this has historically been one of those items that's been cut as it's, it's nice to have, but not need to have. And I think looking at the 22, 23, and the 23, 24 years both being low, obviously the accumulation is there. It should be addressed.
So is that work performed by town personnel using town equipment?
It's a grinder service that we pay for,
So we contract it out?
contract it out.
The grinding piece, yeah.
Grinding, yes.
So none of that work is done in-house?
No, we just collect it and leave it there, and hopefully someone will come and grind it if we are funded properly.
Okay, what I'm saying is we have no in-house capacity for that. 100% of that work is contracted out, or that's just overflow work beyond what we can handle?
No, that's an actual grinding service, grinding machine that we don't have.
We don't have the equipment.
So so what does this expense represent then?
We hire a contractor.
So it's contract?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, to come in and grind whatever we need to grind. And this year, we've had some additional, like I mentioned, the farm and all of.
No, that was my question. So it's not in-house, it's 100% of that service is contracted out? Okay.
Is that like a tub grinder that they refer to? You put all the wooden debris in and,
I don't know.
like we take down a transfer station, that type, down there?
Joe will
as
answer
well?
that.
The brush pickups?
That's,
Yeah.
right. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
The brush pickups and all that?
Yeah, so it's larger than a tub grinder. They call it a mega grinder,
It's
where they
large.
put it on a belt and then it gets grounded up. Big machine, expensive.
Joe, is that something that another town has that we could borrow?
The only towns I know of are in the eastern part of the state. Scara, they operate. They have a machine and they grind everybody's brush. But they pay for that service. That's part of their
Just out of curiosity, I mean, how much is one of the machines?
one machine.
Yeah, I mean, that you would ideally...
750,000.
Okay. I withdraw my question.
Thank you.
That's probably the cheapest.
withdraw your
That would be probably a cheap machine. They're expensive. They're expensive machines.
Joe, I'm familiar with these, and
Yeah.
is this something, though, that we go to the state bid, or do we contract through the DA?
So what I've been doing the past few years is I go out to 3 vendors that are usually on the state, and I ask them to give me a quote. They come out, they take pictures, they drone,
Yep.
they look at the pile, and then they give me a quote.
Okay.
That's basically how we're doing it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how they do it.
Yeah. Okay.
So that 12,000 is a lot more right now, I assume.
No, I think because you don't have funds available, we're not letting you use that. So you're
So we
still
have a big
holding up.
stockpile of
You're still
brush,
gonna
right?
do
I
one
ha-
round.
Yeah, I currently have a massive pile. That's why the number is
yeah.
so high, because last year we only ground a quarter of the pile because I didn't have the funds available in the years past. So the pile's accumulated. So that's why the number is high. Plus, the amount of storms that we received in the last, 18 months, the rain events, it might not have been like a storm Isis, but, that I go after the federal funds, but they've been smaller but significant storms cause damage. And, we have more collections. Besides the 3 that we have, we go out and collect everybody's brush, and it's been stockpiling. I have a significant stockpile right now. So that's part of the reason for that number, so that we can start fresh.
Joe, just a kind of like a aside to this, when we do the grindings, are
Yeah.
they leaving the chips here and we're reusing them?
No,
in-
part of the deal is
They're hauling?
they haul out.
Okay,
I keep a little bit, if residents want it, but it's not really,
it wouldn't be something for trails?
I
or-
wouldn't suggest, well, some of that stuff we're doing, like we're doing at Tresca now, making piles, because we have a chipper.
Okay.
So we're doing some small stuff.
Right.
3-inch minus, whatever, 6-inch minus.
Yeah.
And we have chips.
Okay, so you're using those for the trails and these are getting hauled?
Yeah, so we left a stockpile up there for the Straska area, so they can take care of that.
Okay. Any other questions on sanitation? Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
We will move on to employee benefits. I guess employee benefits.
Employee benefits. All right. Oops. Bear with me here. Okay. So, major change, unfortunately, there are no goals and performance measures on this particular one. We haven't established how to be measurable at this point in time. But what we do have for the health insurance, this year we're going to the state 2.0 plan. That's a 14.5% increase. We are presently with a high deductible plan from Cigna. They gave us their renewal quote for the 24-25 year, and we're asking for just over 40% of an increase, basically due to, I guess that was a new plan for us, the high deductible. We had a minimum premium, and the other portion was based on claims. Our claims had exceeded in 2 years, in both years, the amount that they were estimating. So I'm sure that was the driver of their request of 40% increase. So we're looking forward to the 14% increase, which we got quoted from the state. That'll be a PPO plan instead of a high deductible. So that would save us, as well as not having to pay the HSA payments into each employee's accounts. So that's the major change in there. Social Security is following along with salaries. There's a request for an increase in OPEB. That's post-employment benefits. We have a trust that, for accounting purposes, we're expected to be funding that. So we have been kind of lowballing that around $20,000 each year. So the request is to put the $50,000 in. Just a side note that is a very large amount. It's over $1 million that's supposed to be funded, and it's not expected to be fully funded. I mean, all towns are facing that same requirement. But, I think it would be in our best interest to try to fund it greater. So that's the $30,000 increase. And longevity is entirely contract related. So as we have the newer employees come in and add their years of service, we'll see increases with that.
Questions for Mona?
Mona, I remember that we had a presentation 7 years ago, maybe on the health, the state 2.0. And we felt at the time it wasn't worthwhile proceeding. They have their plan designs, correct?
Yes.
There's no flexibility. We can't go in and say, well, we want we want this particular type of plan design.
They do have more flexibility, so when we were first looking at it, I think that was when it's, it was having its training wheels and it was beginning. I'll say, looking at it now, a few years later, you can see improvements. There are layers to it, but the health plan, for the most part, is standard. Some of the add-ons, for example, we're going to be able to offer vision, and we'll do and still stay with Cigna on the dental. So it has improved, and there are like certain pieces that you can change. We were able to have it match with no concern from all the bargaining units. We had them all sign off, so they are seeing that as an equal or better plan, which is something we were being challenged with before when we were thinking about it.
The way they have their plan design setups, is it like a low, medium, high option for employees?
They are, and we are toward the higher side because we did have the HSA high deductible plan, so they've got a matched service. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the insurance portion.
Okay, come on. Okay, I'm just going to scroll down to the budget lines here. And basically what we have is we have our workers' comp as well as our liability, public officials, and catastrophic plans are all with KERMA, which we have been with them. They did a renewal, and they are offering us at a 5% increase. So we've gone with a continuance with them. The workers' comp could actually come in less than the 5, so we're budgeting at 5. And then they'll come out and do an audit review and look at the actual expenditures. So, but at this point, that is what they're quoting is a 5% across the line.
Questions on insurances? No? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to contingency.
Okay. Okay. One goal, maintain the level of reserve for the unsettled contracts and weather events. At many times, it's a challenging goal. So right now, the request is to have that set at $450. That's an increase of $105. And the major drawer of that is we presently have 4 contracts, well, actually 3, and then there's non-bargaining, that are unsettled. We actually have had discussion with one of them, so we know what their percentages are. They haven't signed the contract yet, so we won't put any information out. And, of course, our largest group is the police group, the FOP, which we just started contract negotiations today. So, obviously not sharing any information about their percentages and so forth, because we're still in the early stages. But for contract negotiations of that 450, there's $250,000 set aside to address AFSCME clerical, the FOP, the library group, as well as any non-bargaining. The other component of contingency is for retirements. We know of 3. That would come out to about $125,000. There's a potential of a 4th. So we have hopefully a little cushion in there to cover that. And in addition, this will be the line item that if we do happen to have snowstorms and we require extra funds to cover the overtime in the highway department or the extra salt. And what we've been seeing lately is with tree care, tends to be going over budget, obviously, for what's needed. The 450, I think, should be sufficient to cover, assuming nothing major were to occur.
And just from a process standpoint, when we have money in the contingency fund and you need to move it to a particular line item within the budget, that goes through finance for approval before it gets moved.
Absolutely. Yes, every year we get a list and we look at any departments, any line items that are over. The first expectation from every department is to balance within its own page. So for example, the highway department would be expected to balance within their own page. If they had excessive snow and causing overtime, then they will be on that list going to finance that says give $20,000 to the highway department. And we do a complete journal entries, and that's given to the auditors at year end as well.
And anything left over year end rolls over into fund balance?
Correct.
You have 53,881, 450, I'm sorry, 345 projected by end of 2024.
Correct. Yes. The amount where
difference is
you.
earmarked?
Yeah. Well, the amount that you see
Always
there,
is,
that's
by
an
the way.
actual, is an actual retirement that we had. So as people retire, they, instead of putting it into their salary line, which would drive their salary line all hilter, and so we'll actually put it right here. So that's one retirement, and we'll have, actually, I think as I speak, there's an additional one in there already. And we'll need to put something aside for the contract that we're going to have settled. So it's always something.
Something with this, the contracts that we talk about, is it possible that the council reviews contracts before the tenant agreement is signed? Is that
Oh, yeah.
something that's possible?
Absolutely.
The union contracts are always, we always
Okay.
do that
Yeah.
in executive session before anything is signed.
Thanks.
Any other questions on contingency? All right. Move on to debt service, principal payments.
Oops. Okay, 5 tonight.
Where would that be?
You wanna do that? Okay. Well, we don't have a lot of control on debt, as we know, but as you can see, at this point, we're at about 9% of expenditures. We've had a lot of conversation about it. Ideally, it'd be good to get this down. We do have, what you don't see on this page, there will be a bond sale for $6 million coming in the fall. That's for the road referendum. The sale will probably occur in the fall, and then first payment will go into your 25-26 year, because the first payment will be delayed. So what we have here are all the outstanding bonds in place. I kind of roll down there. So you can see that we have just a slight increase on the principal side. And if I jump over to the interest side, you will see a decrease. And that's how these particular bonds, we have the option how you want to structure them. The tendency is to keep the principal steady and do the decreasing interest. Obviously, at time of sale and financing, we have the option. But it tends to work better to keep the, or easier to budget, I should say, to watch the principal stay consistent and then watch these interest decrease. So you can see some of these are decreasing. We got $240,000 net decrease in debt overall for next year.
But only in the principal, though.
Pardon me?
But only in the principal, though. So to get the overall picture, you have to look at the principal and the
You have to put principal and interest together, yes.
Mona, can you have bans issued to pay the higher interest bonds off? And just keep on rolling over the bans?
And in fact, that's what we have, at least with that road referendum, you can do 2 rounds of bans. So we did 2 bans already, and that's why I'm going to be facing a bond sale come up on in the fall. So yes, you can do bans as long as the project hasn't closed yet. We do have the The high school project, I got excited for that one for a second, that has been open, I think for, I don't know, when did we finish the high school? Over 10 years ago. And they actually came in from the state and audited it. So we've had this tiny
2
piece
weeks
that's
ago.
been sitting out in a $2 million band consistently. So once they close that, we'll be able to find out if we're maybe getting some revenue back, and we won't do bands on the that high school project again.
Can you do a 30-second ban bond, just explanation for the people out there?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so I'll do so the difference, of course, being bands is a 1 year, and we're just going to and it usually it's a little bit of a higher rate, but it's, and then the bond would be over a 30-year period, and that's the final payment that we're doing on those. So that's why you see like a bond that's coming up in the near future. Of course, if you have any project that's gone out on referendum, you will have to ultimately bond the entire amount expended. So I know we had, for example, our Mosier School, which we had bonded, and it came in lower. So, I mean, we had referendum, expenditures came in lower, so you only bond the amount needed.
Did we receive, so we're just waiting to receive a final payment from the state for the high school?
A final, as they call it, their desk audit. So yes, so it's depending on what they come out with that. It's a major project, and 10 years later, they went through boxes and boxes of invoices. So I'm hoping to hear in the next couple of months.
And how about Mosier?
Mosier has not gone through the audit process. They are very slow, I'm sure whatever their own reasons are at the state level. We did get closure on one of their HVAC projects, which turned around quick. So I don't know if they, smaller projects are quicker to turn around, but some of these largers, they're taking some time.
Okay, thank you.
Mona, just confirm that my understanding is correct or not. My recollection is that bands typically are the financing vehicle that we use while a project is in progress, as we're drawing out the funds and spending it for the work to be done. And then once the work is completed, then you know what the grand total is, and then those short-term obligations get rolled into a longer-term bond. Do I understand that correctly?
That's a good understanding of it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, just to kind of piggyback what John was asking, what is our average interest rate on our bonds currently? Because he was mentioning higher rates, just kind of get that feel.
Right.
And
Well,
if you don't have it
yeah,
now, you can,
yeah, that's all right. I did reach out, because again, we've got to start thinking when we get ready for this $6 million, and you start months in advance, working with our economic developer to come up with the best rating. But we are looking at, we're expecting something around the 3.2, 3.4. Is what they're looking at. And of course, like you said, if it was a different, if we had a different rating, you could, you'd be looking at maybe a couple tenths difference in it.
do you know where we are on average on our existing bonds? Just that.
Oh, that's a variety. I don't even know I don't.
Well, I mean, what's the highest and what's the lowest?
Exactly.
Some of these precede me by like a lot. I believe, I'm thinking around the 4s are the highest that I believe seeing. I would not be surprised if I go back and find something higher. But we've had a couple of 2s, especially on the vans, but we've had a couple of 4s in there on the larger. I could probably get a table of them, actually.
Yeah, it'd have to be a weighted average, too.
Right.
I forgot the term, but there's a term for refinancing bonds.
Refunding. Yeah, I know. It always sounds like a refund, but it's a refunding.
Would any of those make sense on the 4s if we could be in the 3s?
It would. And that may be something to consider when we sit with bond counsel, in the next few weeks, is to look back at what's out there and what's old. Because it'll just take the lower rate and expand it out to the remaining years.
Right.
So definitely worth looking at.
Okay. So that'll be part of the conversation as we.
Right, we'll be informing finance about what's going on with that. So at this point, they're as soon as we get through budget, they're in the wings for us to start talking about bonding and see what the options are.
And Mona, when you do that, when you refund a bond with a new bond, are you locked into 20 years, 30 years, whatever, or can you have flexibility? I mean, is it like when you refinance
Right, you
your
can
house
either
mortgage,
complete
where
the
you- where
period.
you can only do either a 15 or a 30, but for what you're describing with the bonds, do you have flexibility to do the same number of years at just at a better rate?
Correct. You can finish it off at the better rate, or you can do a 20-year, in fact, and roll it out that way. So we have options. We have options.
Okay, thank you.
On the house side too, you can do any number of years you want, really. But that's not the point, but that's good.
Didn't know that. Okay.
So, Mona, on the 2022 refunding, what did that encompass?
That actually went back, oh, I can't see it there because it's off the page. That went back to a 2013 or a 2014 bond, that if my recollection is correct, it was involving the athletic fields, road referendum, and I don't recall what the other item was. So it was some older items that were back in 2013, 2014.
I wonder if it was part of the land, open space referendum. Was that 10
That
million?
could be the other item. I can visualize 3 items in there, and you're probably right, the land as well.
The $10 million farm,
No, the open,
The land acquisition.
yeah, it was, I think, 10 years ago or 12 years ago. 10 million was,
yeah, for land, for open space and farmland
yeah.
for development rights
Yeah.
and purchase.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
thought it was 2012.
it may have been, yeah.
You had a 2019 land acquisition.
That's
that's
the
yours.
farm,
Yeah.
That was
that's
the
the
farm
farm
purchase, yeah.
purchase.
Okay, thank you.
Like memory lane.
Any other questions for debt service? No? All right, I guess we'll move to the hot topic, capital improvements.
Okay, so we're gonna do something a little different for capital. You're gonna bear with me, I'm having a handout. And a cough. So, we had discussion about, the Board of Ed's, capital already, and as you know, we've been trying to do the reserve, process. So what we're handing out, and we had an opportunity to look particularly in the reserve for infrastructure, and get into that a little bit, that we've found out about some grant funds that are available for certain items, so we're able to shuffle these things around with the engineering department. But if I just look at this one page, that's page 1, that's got the green section in there, there are some items that are not in the reserve. For example, we had the Freightliner truck from the Highway Department. That was planned to be a 5-year lease for the 2024 Freightliner. Is a request that's not under a reserve, so I wanted to just touch on that if there's any discussion. I don't know if I have anything for him on that. If not, I'll just keep on rolling.
Well, that was the one we just approved in the last couple of months.
No, that was the one, it was funded in 23, 24, then we did the purchase, happened in a couple of the past few months. This particular one will be replacing the 1999, which is the oldest one of the fleet
Okay, so this
that
is
we
in
had talked
addition
about.
to that one.
That's in addition to the,
Gotcha.
correct. The last one was the 2 vehicles.
This has to go through finance, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it hasn't been approved. This is for the 24-25 budget.
Right.
But the last one did go through finance.
Yes, what we do is we get the funding so that when we go through for the leasing, we have to say that funding is there, so it'll show up on the budget. If there's no funding, then they won't give us a lease.
Right, so if it's approved here in the budget, and it goes before finance, there could be a reason that finance says, no, you change your mind.
Yes.
It could be.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
Yes, answering it that way, yes.
So this is an entire 5-year real capital improvement program, so you see it's the first column is fiscal year '25 is what we're talking about funding, and then you can see how the other projects are funded planned out so that they actually get done in the next 5 years, over the next 5 years.
We had, and again, I'm just going to look at the ones in the green section, and then we'll jump into the reserves. So we also have request for the pickup truck, which is the in the it's like Parks Facilities Department. And again, we're replacing an older truck for that group. Parks Facilities.
Do we want to discuss these as a group after, or just, you just want to explain all of them, and then we could have?
That's fine, we can go, yeah, I'll
Okay.
just keep it rolling. And also in the green, we talked about the reval. We'll be pulling, able to pull that off the table. Obviously, 40,000 per year will not be the initiative we're taking this particular year. We have, the following line is a plan for the 2 electric vehicles and a charging station. The 79,000 is the net figure. We worked with the audit firms, and we've seen some federal credits. Of course, there's been a lot of conversation about whether those are even available, so
Stay tuned for that.
still trying to pursue it. The police generator, we have a grant. It's a BRIC grant, FEMA grant out there. We have not gotten the approval on it yet. Could take some time. If it does go through, we would only have $40,000 needed for the match. If it doesn't go through, then obviously that we need the full $180,000. And clearly, if it were not funded, then we would just be waiting for something to happen or not happen.
How old's that generator, you know?
20 plus 21, 24, 26.
1992.
1992.
That's 32.
You want to come up?
Yeah, Phil, come on.
We've been talking about this generator for
Forever.
years at this point.
What's the useful life of a generator?
20 years, industry standard. Bill Sear, Facilities Director. Yeah, the generator in service date was 1992. It was 32 years old. 20 years is the life expectancy. Some generators can go as much as 30, but you get into issues like parts. And we just, if you recall, we had to replace the Firehouse 3 generator. That kind of could put on us during a course of a year. Course of a budget year. The component that usually goes is the power generation portion, and that
It's our generator.
you can't reorder one. It would have to be rewound. By the time all the costs come in, you're talking $20,000-$30,000. So my fear is basically that's what it can go. Again, 32 years, knock on wood. It's, we service it every year. We load bank the unit every 3 to 5 years. It's time. It's rusted. It's showing its age. We don't want to get stuck. If this thing, kaputs during the course of the year and we don't fund it, then we have to bring in a temporary generator, and that's like about $5,000 a month until we can get the replacement. If we put an order in today, we're going to get the generator 10 months from now. So, we're rolling the dice if we don't fund it this year.
Yeah, take a look at your monitor.
So
That's the generator.
our
expectation
generator.
of hearing back from the grant, do you know?
They've been taking their time. We've acquired a few times, haven't heard back.
How long ago did we put in for it? you know?
We've been promised that we may hear something in June. I'm not sure if that was, and this is the second round. We applied for a first round and didn't make it in the third. Okay, I'm sorry. Phil. Third round.
We tried in 13, and then we tried again in 15, 16. And this is the third time.
Well, thanks for continuing to try.
We try.
Why did we get denied the grant?
We don't know.
Competitive.
Yeah, it's,
Well, this is my first time around as far as, you know, the implementing of a grant. They don't get back to us on the reasons why.
no, I applied twice in the past, and just, you know, again, they just,
Do they think it's not old enough?
It's got old enough. It's getting older.
I think we
well,
got a good.
that was back in 12,
fight
even
now.
before 2012, when I did my first grant here for this one.
There's a lot involved as far as
Oh,
what
yes.
they want for information. I went through months of gathering information, putting it into a format, their format. It's a 50-50. We put a lot of work
We
into
did.
it, research and try to detail every possible answer to their questions, pictures, and so.
Thanks
we'll
for
see what
doing that.
happens.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
I think we got
All of you, yeah.
What's the amount of the grant? I'm sorry, was it?
140?
It should cover the 140.
Well, it's 180,938, but we have to input 40,000
Correct.
as a town, so.
So Mona, let me put on my creative financing here and ask the question that I've kind of asked before, so I know my answer. If we put 40,000 into the budget, we always talk about bonds and bans, but we actually have the ability to go to the bank and take a 4-year note. And we could finance that over the 4 years. So we're hedging our bets by putting it into the budget for the 40. Worst case, we go to the bank and borrow the money. Best case is we get the grant. But we don't keep having to kick it down the road, and we're spreading it out over a period of time.
And
I
it's
don't
still
think
gonna
we
take
use
10
that.
months, yeah.
Yeah.
That
Could-
ability to use just a standard bank loan as a municipality as a tool off
We
of it.
could. We could.
So, you know, that's another
to hope we
option.
don't have to use it,
140
correct.
off the budget in the current year.
Right.
We spread it out over the next 4, cost a little bit more, Phil's be able to cut, you know, some of the service time onto it.
I could sleep at night,
Yeah.
not worrying about that.
And he can
And
order
hopefully we
it.
don't need it, right? Hopefully the weather cooperates, but
But you would want to reflect the entire amount over the years. So obviously to go financing, they want to see proof that we have it budgeted for. So you'd want to spread it out over the 4 or 5 years
Absolutely.
before financing is contacted. Because most financing agents, unless you're, you know, good for the dollar and have it a funded item, they won't entertain me.
Let's
Great
get them
idea.
to entertain you.
Okay.
And then the 20, you know,
Oh,
I'm just gonna go through a couple of these I'm familiar. The 2024 Freightliner, is that the one that's replacing the 2019?
It's replacing the 1999.
1999?
Yes.
And that's one that we have difficulty getting parts for because of the age.
Correct. Yes.
And that's a 5-year. The F-350 pickup is a 4-year lease. I mean, we could kick it out to a 5-year lease. It's only gonna save $2,500 a year. But what year is it replacing?
I think that's a 2001. One.
So it's a 23-year-old piece of equipment.
That's what I'm driving.
It's
2001.
not so bad, right?
Pretty good.
The windows still go down, you got air conditioning that way.
Just broken in.
And then the reval, are we removing the full 40 or a portion of the 40?
The whole thing.
Full 40 for this year, and we'll revisit.
All right, and then the electric vehicles, is that a nice to have, or is that a we need?
What are they? Do you guys know your plan?
We're not sure yet. We were looking at those
There was a smaller SUV
Maverick,
and,
the Ford Maverick, the little pickup truck. But we haven't really gone beyond this right now. But we did start looking at prices. It is nice to have, you know.
Who is to use those?
It would probably be like the pool,
the pool vehicles.
hallway engineering and building.
Okay. What do they have now?
They have Ford Fusions.
How old do you think?
They're pretty, like 2018,
yeah,
17.
13,
They're in good shape.
14.
Okay.
I think if some of these had been anticipated a few years ago, you probably could have used ARP money, right? Especially for the EVs and the generator. But, unfortunately, we're at a point now where we don't have anything.
And John, and I don't remember if you were here with we wanted to do the EVs, I thought, for the police department when we were talking about it.
Yeah.
And at that point, they weren't in favor.
Right.
That may have changed too, technology.
Yeah, it's going to be going in that direction.
Correct.
And, it just seems year over year, the grants and the subsidies change with, what the state provides, what the feds provide. Every year it changes. And I'm just not sure if we're at a position now where it's favorable to do this or wait when they want to push EVs a little bit more. It just seems like the market is changing with the adaptation of EVs. But I've always been in support of the EVs because it saves on the maintenance costs. It saves on fuel and oil. The only thing you have to do to an EV is change the tires. And once in a while, the brakes, which last 3 times, 4 times longer than a regular car. So there's an offset there.
Okay.
That's just my perspective.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. We just got to make sure we're running them enough
Yeah.
to get the return on
Exactly.
going EV.
Exactly.
So
That's why the push was.
sounds like we do a little more research on that topic.
That's fine.
And part of it, Ray, too, for the EV is the level of the charger. So you don't want to put in a level 2. If it's going to be for just charging for the town employees, then, yeah, level 2 is fine if it's going to be charging overnight. But if you want level 3, where somebody's going to a function here for an hour, they need a level 3 to charge up. So, that would be
Yeah.
a consideration.
You'd have to bring in another company to put a level 3, and I don't think you can do that yourself.
No, there's companies out there that do the fast charging. Maybe not to the level of Tesla, but they're out there. And that, that could be a revenue generator too, if we charge the public to charge up here. Whatever vendor is used.
Right. You want to look at reserves in the engineering department?
Engineering.
So we had a request for $1 million for infrastructure that would cover items in engineering. We have the items that are supporting it. That's on the second page. We did do some revisions because,
Yeah, Mona,
Yeah.
I had a question about that. Why on the second page it adds up to 700, but you have the million on the top? Maybe I'm missing something.
so the request is to have a reserve, to start establishing a reserve for the $1 million for the infrastructure, and the 1.2 for Board of Ed, and the 250 for facilities. So the request is to do the reserve. The individual items, either on one year or another, will not necessarily meet that amount, but at least if we start the process of doing reserves, because we've gotten to the point of trying to fund them individually, Oh, I almost got to the end of the sentence. So, or not funding them, and as well as maybe putting them off to the point that we need to do some bonding items on that. So, as you can say, we are putting the items in priority order. So you'll have, it is for $700,000 for the first year, $900 for the following, and it increases. So if we were building a reserve, if you chose at the $1 million, it would go in. Anything unexpended would stay in the reserve to be used for future items. So the goal is not that these things don't balance. It actually shouldn't balance, because we're going to put a reserve and try to cover the items that the particular department or area would need, for example, infrastructure.
So 300 is the reserve, everything else is earmarked for 700.
For that particular year, yes.
in that particular box, the
In that
infrastructure box?
particular year, yes.
The, yeah, the GF, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so 300 is the actual reserve. The million is not the reserve, right? Because 700 is earmarked already for year 25.
The format is it would be a reserve that we could start setting a threshold that we could consistently have, that each year you would want to have something set aside. So rather than looking at each project individually, we would start creating a reserve for these items that do crop up. So rather than looking at them as individual items, which I think is kind of what's happening here, it is to get in that concept that we should be starting to create a reserve.
Okay.
Rather than reviewing each item individually.
When those projects do come up individually and we don't require review, is there at least going to be some dollar amount that would require review?
We've got everything from, bid requirements that are going to go to financing, anything that's multi-year, and these type of projects are going to government ops for updates as well. So,
Yeah, they'll work through government ops and finance, and then to the council.
I'll try to show a few.
Yeah, we'll go through what we have proposed plan for 2015. Starting from the top, we're looking at completing some gaps on Hayes Road.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm going to see if I can catch up with you. Oh, I don't have the right tab.
I can use this.
Go ahead. Go ahead with that.
This one or this one? Which one?
With that. I think I got the wrong insert.
Oh, they don't have that. I'm gonna use this sheet.
Okay.
All right. We're looking to $250,000 to complete some gaps on Hayes Road. Looking at sidewalks on Washington Street, that couples well with the Glastonbury Avenue sidewalk project, which is a grant-funded project. We're still waiting for the state to hear. And then $125,000 budgeted to do a public works space needs study or evaluation. That was mentioned a little while ago.
You want to look at any of those?
Ray, or Mona, for the community farm, phase 2, isn't there money still left over from the bond?
The bond was for.
Purchase only.
Was for purchase only and legal expenses associated with the purchase.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ray and Mona, I feel like I'm missing something very fundamental here. You have to explain it to me like a fifth grader. In page 1 at the top, the yellow, we see, for example, park facilities, the reserve is $250,000. But then on page 2, when I see that category broken out, I see a total of $300,000 in expenses in the orange line. What am I missing?
Yeah, and again, I was trying to explain that the goal is to get ourselves to a point where we can at least start doing a reserve for the various projects. On that second page that you're looking at, you'll see them itemized. For example, in this case, we were reserving the $250. Then the reserves for these rather than trying to fund them individually. So you're right. With that $300,000, you may not get them all done with the $250, but we need to get ourselves to that point that we're planning a reserve. We're setting something consistent. We're finding too frequently that these items are coming up and they get discussed one at a time, and some funded and some don't. So we're trying to establish a system of being more dependable on where the funding source is coming from, budgeting more wisely on capital projects rather than having that, let's look at them, a few months in advance and start trying to squeeze them out. Correct.
So page 2 is kind of the wish list?
It's a wish list that would fit into that $250,000 or the case of the infrastructure, they had their $1 million, they would get those in as well. Wish list and also in priority order.
And then Board of Ed, you have 1.2 for the so-called reserve, but you have a wish list of 1,422,000.
Yes, we did meet with them, and they were actually very happy with the concept of having a reserve line, something that they would know would be consistent, that each year that there was going to be that 1.2 million, and they would be able to plan their projects accordingly.
So
They would either delay one of those items or portions of those items or cover those within their own funds.
So I guess I've had a misunderstanding of what reserve means in this context. So what I'm seeing here is that reserve just means a fixed and predictable number projected to years out in the future. So
Exactly.
that the various departments
Exactly.
have an idea what it's going to be. It kind of locks it in for a while.
Correct.
It doesn't mean, certainly for year one, it does this, for example, this $1 million reserve for infrastructure, that does not mean that we have a $1 million unallocated. You already have $700,000 in mind to spend it. And same thing with the 250, the so-called reserve for Parks and Rec. That doesn't mean, Parks Facilities, that doesn't mean we're going to have a $250,000 slush fund out there. You already have it all earmarked to be spent.
Right.
Well, so the reserve concept, as I now understand it, is just have a fixed, predictable number multiple years in the future.
Correct.
Okay.
Can I further ask a question on that then? If we have $1 million for infrastructure and then, 250 for parks and facilities, parks and facilities spends the 3, are you going to take the 50 from
No.
infrastructure?
No, it would not.
So why would we underfund one and overfund the other?
I think what we're trying to do is establish a baseline, and obviously, as you're
forward, okay.
right, yeah.
One of the items that kind of bothers me, and I've brought this up before, is the Elm Ridge Pool. And I did find that back in 2020, $450,000 was removed from the savings account, that I call it, that we had put money into. And I believe it was allocated to the Mosier, or Stevens School roof. Do you recall, was there any discussion about replacing that money?
No discussion about that. I looked at the minutes. In fact, I tried researching that. I was going to have a follow-up email for you tomorrow. But yes, I went back and found the same. It was during finance that was the switch from the non-reoccurring. So non-reoccurring has categories within it, and there was $480,000 taken from pool and moved to the school. No discussion in there about replenishing that I found either.
Is there any, I don't want to rehash it, but it's disappointing that's one of the things we were saving for, and it kind of got taken away. So now we have 1.1 million that we have to aim towards. Okay, thank you.
Mona, the other one, and this is from, I think, last night's council meeting, there was, Council Ravine noted that Senator Lesser secured a grant for $250,000. I think it was for the Beach Road culvert.
Yeah, you'll see that the replacement for the design. We originally, actually, we just took that out today. We had 250 in there, so we took that 250 out because that will be grant funded.
All right, so on the online version, that's still in
That's still-
fiscal
Correct.
year 26.
Right, that's why I handed out the update, because
Okay,
we
so
had
you-
new news.
So we're gonna zero that in 26, 25 and 26,
Yep.
and offset it with the
Correct.
grant funds?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
There are also some smaller amounts that I had mentioned that you were talking about. Are those factored in as well as CIP items, or?
But
Which, I'm not sure which ones you're referring to.
I'm trying to bring.
That's okay.
Let me find the document here that I was reading off of. Bear with me. Oh, just the wrong one. Hold on. I wasn't prepared to talk about this tonight.
Surprise.
Yeah, fine.
Are you talking about your report?
Yeah.
This is the $250,000 that Matt Lesser has
Right, but so they talked about 55,000 designated for senior disabled housing. I don't know if that's part of CIP or that's outside of it.
No, that's outside.
That's a different.
Right.
Yep, and 25,000 for the volunteer fire department.
That would not be on this page.
Okay, and then there's also money from the VFW post, which wouldn't be pertinent. So okay.
Okay.
So Mona, what I see on a 5-year basis here, right, is we're gonna be short the earmarked items by roughly 1.5 million. In other words, what we're allocating is gonna be short. The infrastructure is gonna be positive 675. Parks Facilities is gonna be minus 351, and the Board of Ed is gonna be minus 1.125 million. So call it 1.1 million. And then the unfunded, which I'll just throw in there, another 235.
Don't throw the unfunded in.
All right.
They're
then
there
I
for a
won't-
reason.
I didn't want to.
Don't throw those in.
So how do we solve that? Are some of these items going to be moved to the general budget and then taken out of the reserve budget?
Ideally, as we've gotten more accustomed to actually, so we just gotta get off the ground and set the reserve
Yeah.
level. And then it would be great if we start looking at it and see, are other projects coming? Do
Well,
we
yeah,
adjust it
because you don't
upward
even
and
have that,
downward?
because I'm
Right,
sure we're going to have other
exactly.
projects enter
Yes.
this matrix, you know?
Right, absolutely. Oh, yeah. And again, this was a recommendation at where to set the level. I mean, obviously, it's open to discussion if we wanted
Yeah.
to start low and get there, but to get to that process of not doing a CIP as an item by item and waiting, you know, that we at least know that we will have something available, and that's the process. And again, that's the pattern that's trying to set. So for better financing of capital projects rather than it being, you know, well, this looks good for next year. Let's have a plan. We know at least we can do something within this range and this will be available and working that way. At this point, we are, you know, some years just saying, sorry, this is all going to get kicked down the road and, or, you know, there may be one item looks better than the other. So we're just looking for some planning, some consistency that the departments could work with.
But realistically, these numbers are establishing a floor.
That's what they are.
Yeah, but what is wrong with like looking at each project on its own merit for the next year? I mean, I don't see any fundamental problem with that. We do that in our homes, right? Like, we look at each project as it comes, right?
Perhaps. I mean, some people have, this is my, you know, I'm setting this aside in my budget for my home, and I know that I'm
Right,
going
but
to
you
always
still-
put in the savings account that this is going to come. And that's it. It's a different way of thinking. Not
Yeah,
that it's
a
wrong
sa-
or right.
It's a savings
planning.
account, but then we will have, so it goes back to the question Dave was asking. How is that process going to play out? Let's just assume that we fund this for $1 million, right? Like the reserve, as you call it. Then how are we gonna, what will be council's role in approving each project as it comes along? Or is it gonna be the town manager who's gonna just approve it based on his priorities?
No.
No, you'll always have the CIP. We got the CIP plan, which is this, so you'll know which projects are coming. It's going to CIP. We're going through. So no, you still have quite a big role, and it goes through all different levels, whether it be finance gets their involvement and government ops has their involvement, and
Each department.
that doesn't change.
Department heads, they know what's out in the field, and they will come to me, and then we'll go to council, we'll go to CIP, like Mona said, and then government ops, and, you know, there's a process that we need to follow in order to, you know, like you're right, maybe in 2027, we don't want to put in $500,000 for construction of a beach road culvert, and something else popped up, and maybe we can reprioritize. But at least the funding levels are there, and we can move things out, we can put them in. That's the whole point of doing this 5-year plan. That, you know, we know what we're looking at today, but maybe tomorrow something else happens and we can adjust all these numbers as we go throughout the whole year.
Okay.
It's a rolling 5-year, though. It's gonna, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Or 10, or,
I guess the concern, and John kind of brought it up, is every 2 years we have a new council, and they put money aside and then the money gets swept for a different project, and then we stop funding. So it's conceptually great, but there's no follow-through or commitment to a project the way we're setting it up. And we
This
could end
pro-
up with zero again.
This process is an attempt to stop that behavior. You know, hopefully, there's not a wholesale turnover, every 2 years. And, this would carry through, and eventually it becomes like institutional to have a 5-year capital improvement program like many, many towns have. So they know what they're building, like Glastonbury, they know what they're going to be doing in 5 years.
Right. So we would,
And if I may, and I think, I'm going to go back to that, as you say, swept away with the 480,000. I can't imagine that realistically that should have been an approval process. That's a change in, I think we're getting accustomed to seeing in finance the list of the non-recurring items, and we know what are in there. So perhaps it just shouldn't continue or occur in the future. Right.
Well, that would be a slight concern of mine too, because I don't want that to get swept out either for
agree.
another priority that popped on the sheet,
Yeah.
And I think the 450 we lost, obviously it's not replenished, so
Yeah.
to take it off the sheet was not right, but.
Yeah, I don't know how to
Sheet like this, that's why.
No.
kind of hedge against that problem. I don't see like this will solve that though, just creating a reserve.
Right, because you can't bind
Yeah,
a
I
new
mean-
council.
Yeah, I don't see any mitigation for that, really.
can.
You could all be out in 2
It's
years.
hopefully
Exactly.
planning,
It-
hopefully a plan.
Exactly. I see it like more as like, it's, the council changes, the priorities change. It's a reflection of the people who elect the council. That's how I see it, the most fundamental way. And if the council wants to change it, they can change it, so be it. I'm not on it. People representing the people, they can make that decision. I guess I'm very fundamental on that, like in terms of like how this process works. Reserves, sure, like how big they should be, but the prioritization piece, that's what I'm worried about. Like it's a gray area for me. Like I don't think it's that 450,000. Yeah, I mean, you look back at it, it looks like that it shouldn't have been moved, but that reflected the priorities of that council.
But I think we're talking two different things. One's budgeting, and then one is whether or not we pass an ordinance to kind of force it to stay within a particular structure. So there's two components.
Agreed.
And it can
Agreed.
be accomplished.
Agreed.
So we have to budget, and then we have to figure out what the right process is.
Right, because I don't want to see another 450
Right.
get wiped off. We earmarked it for that, and then it didn't happen,
Right, and that's why I think the cart before the horse. I think the process should be in place for me to feel comfortable about putting this in motion. So I agree with Alan, like there are two pieces to this, but we don't have one piece at all, which is the process piece right now in
Well, they
front of
kind of
us.
outlined it here, a little bit.
This 5-year.
A little bit, I guess.
Well, I mean, but it's got to be a little bit more.
Yeah,
Well, that-
it needs
older
more meat
ink.
on the bones.
That's for budgeting purposes, the 5-year.
Yes.
But it
No, I
could-
know.
It could get
Well, they
swept to
have
another
actual,
purpose.
like, projects marked. I mean, like, there's going to be some added, some deleted as we finish them,
Right.
Like Hayes Road is gone if we do this, and Washington Street, as well as Public Works Base, done.
Yeah, there are a lot of like, yeah.
I would like to see it a little bit more balanced, because I feel like park and facilities could lose out. Because they're underfunded even the next year by 136,000. Actually, every year they're underfunded.
Well, it depends what projects.
We've
It's all
got no
based on the projects.
objections to recommending that the amounts differ.
Move a little. And
Yeah.
will this help the fund balance, by the way, anyway? You were talking about upgrading our bond standing and whatnot, and we've pretty much thinking we may lift the, to the
Yeah.
10% you know,
Yes, yeah.
whatever.
And ideally, this is part of getting there is, you know, is planning. And I know, like the analogy of your home, obviously, you know, if you get accustomed to putting the money aside and planning for the projects, waiting for them to happen versus waiting for them to happen. And that's what it's getting you prepared for, so that the departments can realize that, all right, I've got $1 million available for this. I can prioritize my projects instead of pushing them and saying, well, we don't have it this year. I don't really, you know, for whatever reason, we don't want to raise taxes and so forth, and we just don't do it. And it gets pushed down the road, and it's those pushed down the roads. For example, perhaps the pool could become a referendum item if we don't start putting funds aside and be a little more proactive rather than reactive. Because without putting funds aside for something like that, or even, you know, looking at some of these other, you know, roof replacements, which are large, you know, are we going to go out and have to do referendum on them if we keep pushing them out? So it's trying to get ourselves accustomed to budgeting for capital differently. It is. It's a different way of thinking.
And not borrowing.
Correct.
So just to use the last, hopefully, few minutes of the meeting, if there's any specific projects we'd like to discuss that are on the list. You know, I know on the screen we have the Public Works.
Oh, yes,
design.
if there's anything
We can get
else.
the specific details to it, and if there are questions, we can answer them, or get answers.
Curious about that front entrance to GMS. Is that man trap they were talking about?
That is what they were talking about. Yeah. I don't know if they offered any
No, that's a canopy.
photos.
No, there's two of them
Where's the other one?
on Board of Ed.
It's front entrance canopy, then just 1, 2, 3,
Front
4 below
entrance.
that,
Oh.
white line.
Yeah, the 47,000 is.
I was looking at the 800,000 one, Fran.
No,
sorry.
no.
Okay.
That jumped off the page to me.
I don't know if they submitted anything.
I don't think.
Oh, we're looking at this year's budget, not that one. I'm looking at this
Let me
year.
see.
Just a little curious about the bleachers at the,
Okay.
like
I think this is what we had on the canopy. They did submit a bit of a photo of what that was about.
Yeah, like, it's 5 years away, not,
Yeah.
we
Okay.
shouldn't allocate, but what about the bleachers? Is it the opposite side, did I remember seeing somewhere?
Yes.
They've been somewhat embarrassing over the years, being at that field all the time.
Let's see if he's got his bleachers. Yeah, see, they had the opportunity to submit photos, but not in all cases, so at this point, he did not
I don't think they're
submit
there
anything
anymore.
for
I
that.
think we removed them, right?
Oh, well, that's probably why I didn't get a photo.
Yeah, they're not there. I think
Okay.
it's just temporary there, if there are.
Any other specific projects anybody has questions on?
And if you do look through the budget book, you'll see that there's photos of all these items, in case you're curious. I mean, and that's, I think, one of the better parts of this, the capital budgeting was getting the departments involved, and they could put in either the maps of the sidewalk areas and so forth. So we've got some good material in the book as well.
If there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.